Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. In the last class, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan hafidhahullah ta'ala, he mentioned a principle in Islam, a well-known established principle in Islam. ارتكاب أخف الضررين لدفع أعلاهما. That is, to take the least of two harms, or the least of two evils, in order to repel the greater of the two. What was the reason why the Shaykh mentioned this principle? For those who were here, what was its connection to the lesson, the last lesson that we took? Yeah. Nah. Ahsan. So it's better for a person to listen and obey a Muslim ruler, even if he's oppressive. As long as he's not telling people to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's better for him than to revolt or to incite people to revolt and remove him by force. Because it's going to lead to bloodshed. It's going to lead to people losing their lives, their property, and so on and so forth. So this was the reason why he mentioned this principle. It's not to say that there's no harm when it comes to a Muslim being patient with the oppression of a Muslim ruler. There's harm, for sure there's harm. But it's less than the harm that a person is going to experience if they revolt against the Muslim ruler. And we've mentioned so many times what happened in the Middle East, over 10 years ago, 2011. All of those countries, the so-called Rabi' al-Arabi, the Arab Spring, and they call it the Arab Fall. The Arab Fall, and that's really what it should be called. Now, also the Shaykh, he mentioned another very important point, which is there's no hadith, there's no proof or evidence that indicates that the Muslim ruler who is oppressive should be fought. One of our brothers, may Allah preserve him and bless him, he mentioned some people, they mentioned the hadith, well-known hadith Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ra'a minkum munkara falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whoever from amongst you sees a vice, he sees an evil, then let him change it with his hand. If he can't change it with his hand, he speaks out against it. If he can't do that, then he hates in his heart, and that's the least of Iman. What's the issue with a person using this hadith, saying that this hadith is a proof that you're supposed to talk out against the Muslim rulers, you're supposed to rebel against them and remove them by force if they're oppressive? What's the issue with using this hadith? I mentioned it last class, but for those who weren't here, or they didn't hear the response. Because this is a hadith that people use. They use this as a proof and evidence. They're saying, what the Shaykh is saying, Shaykh Fawzan, that there's no proof or evidence for revolting or fighting the Muslim ruler who was oppressive. This hadith right here is a proof. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you see an evil, then change it with your hand. What's the issue with this? Nah. So the understanding of the hadith is incorrect. The understanding of the hadith is incorrect. When it comes to changing something with one's hand, this is with regard to the leader himself. It's with regard to the one who has authority. We live here in America. If we see a munkar or a vice taking place in the streets, or we see something in the store or somewhere else, do you have authority to do anything about it, to change it with your hand? If you do that, then they might arrest you. You might get arrested. Alright? So it's a misunderstanding when it comes to the understanding of the hadith. This is with regard to people who have authority. It can be used even for a father in his household, or a mother in her household, with regard to the children and what have you. But this hadith is not a proof. Also another issue, this hadith is it's general. It's general. You can't apply a general hadith to specific ahadith. We have specific ahadith, and we mentioned numerous ahadith already, where the Prophet ﷺ is telling us what? Isbiru, be patient. Be patient with the harms of the Muslim leader that is oppressive. Now, so the point that we're going to take tonight is the statement of the author alayhi rahmatullah, He said, وَيَحِلُّ قِتَالُ الْخَوَارِجِ إِذَا عَرَضُوا لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ وَأَهْلِيهِمْ. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam al-Barbahārī, he said, it's permissible, it's permitted to fight the Khawarij if they attack the Muslims. If they attack the Muslims when it comes to their wealth, themselves, or their families. وَلَيْسَ لَهُ إِذَا فَارَقُوهُمْ أَنْ يَطْلُبَهُمْ. And the Muslim leader, he shouldn't go looking or searching for them if they leave them. Meaning if they leave the Muslims. They leave the jama'ah of the Muslims. وَلَا يُجْهِزُ عَلَى جَرِيحِهِمْ. They shouldn't finish off or kill, the people who are Khawarij, who have been injured or they've been hurt in battle. وَلَا يَأْخُذُ فَيْئَهُمْ. He's not to take their property or their wealth as spoils of war. وَلَا يَقْتُلُ أَسِيرَهُمْ. He's not to kill their captives. وَلَا يَتْبَعُ مُدْبِرَهُمْ. And he's not to chase after or go after those who have fled. So in the explanation, Shaykh Fawzan, he said, عرفنا أن الخوارج هم الذين يرون شق عصا الطاعة. So we already know that the Khawarij are those who view that the obedience to the Muslim leader is to be renounced. They don't view that the Muslim leader is to be obeyed, even if it doesn't entail disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ويرون أن ولي الأمر ليس له بيعة أو لم يبقى له بيعة على الناس إذا حصل منه معصية. And they view that the Muslim leader, there is no allegiance that's given to him. There's no allegiance to be given to him, or the people are not to give him allegiance if he commits sins. If he commits sins. وَيُكَفِّرُونَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ بِكَبَائِرِ الذُّنُوبِ. And they declare the Muslims to be disbelievers because of major sins. هؤلاء إذا اعتنقوا هذا المذهب ولم يكن لهم شوكة ولم يقاتلوا فإنهم يتركون مع مناصحتهم والبيان لهم لعلهم يتوبون. So if people, and this is applicable even to us, and I want to make a very important point, because the things that the Shaykh Hafidhullah is mentioning right now is specifically with regard to the Muslim authorities. But there are situations, even for us living in America, that we have to do something. So the Shaykh, he's saying right here that if people adopt this methodology, they say the Khariji, no one says the Khariji, by the way. Everyone's going to say that they're practicing Quran and Sunnah. But if they adopt this methodology, they declare the Muslim rulers to be disbelievers, or the one who commits major sins to be disbelievers, and they view that the Muslim ruler is to be removed by force. He said, if they don't have power, and they don't fight, they're to be left like that. But they're to be advised. All right, you don't just leave people. All right, this is another issue. Sometimes, even from amongst ourselves, if we see a Muslim doing something, we know it's haram, but we won't say nothing. We won't say nothing. I'm just talking in general. All right, if you see an evil, then you should say something. If you have the ability, you say something. So these people, as long as they don't have power, they're not fighting or killing anyone, they're to be left, but they're to be advised. And the truth is to be clarified to them so that perhaps they will repent. أما إذا صار لهم شوكة وأظهروا القوة فيجب على المسلمين قتالهم كفا لشرهم. However, if they have power, if the Khawarij get power, and they manifest their strength, it's obligatory for the Muslims to fight them كفا لشرهم, to repel their evil. ولا يقاتلون على أنهم كفار. They're not to be fought as disbelievers. We took this issue already. Are the Khawarij kuffar? We took this issue already. The majority of the scholars say they're not kuffar. And you have scholars, the likes of the Shaykh ibn Baz, rahimahullah, who said they are kuffar. So it's a difference of opinion. But the majority of the scholars, the likes even of Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, their view is what? They're not kuffar. وَلَا يُقَاتَلُونَ عَلَى أَنَّهُمْ كُفَّارٌ. They're not to be fought as disbelievers. بَلْ يُقَاتَلُونَ عَلى أَنَّهُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ جَارُوا عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَاعْتَدَوْا عَلَيْهِمْ. They are to be fought as Muslims who have oppressed and transgressed against the Muslims. ولهذا لما سئل أمير المؤمنين علي رضي الله عنه عن الخوارج أكفار هم قال لا من الكفر فروا. And this is why when the leader of the believers, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali radiallahu anhu, was asked, are the Khawarij disbelievers? He said, no, they fled from disbelief. They ran away from disbelief. Look at their ideology in their creed. They say that the person who commits a major sin is a kafir. So they literally fled from disbelief. They are afraid of disbelief for themselves. Of course, they have ghulu, they go overboard and they're extreme. But he said, لا من الكفر فروا. He said, no, they fled from disbelief. They ran away from disbelief. ولكنهم قوم بغوا علينا. However, they're people who have transgressed against us. They're people who have oppressed us. فلا يقاتلون على أنهم كفار. So therefore, they're not to be fought as disbelievers. ولذلك لا تسبى نساؤهم وذراريهم. And for this reason, if the Muslims do fight the Khawarij, right, the Muslim leader has ordered his army, his military to fight the Khawarij, their women and their children are not to be taken as prisoners of war. Right? We know in Islam, when Muslims fight non-Muslims and they win, the Muslims win, what happens? The women are taken, the children are taken. Right? They're not killed or anything like this, like in these societies where the kuffar, they go into Muslim countries, they're killing everybody. And they try to act as though they're so humane. Right? Like they're the champions of human rights and what have you, right? It's foolishness. But this is the ruling, right? If the Muslim ruler fights against them, their women and their children are not taken as captives of war. وَلَا تُؤْخَذُ أَمْوَالُهُمْ. Their wealth is not taken. وَلَا يُجْهَزُ عَلَى جَرِيحِهِمْ. And those who are injured from amongst them, meaning the Khawarij, they are not to be killed. لأن قتالهم إنما هو لكف شرهم لا لكفرهم. And this is important. And this is because fighting them is to repel their evil and not because of them being disbelievers. So the next statement, قوله ويحل قتال الخوارج إذا عرضوا للمسلمين في أموالهم وأنفسهم وأهليهم. So the statement of the author عليه رحمة الله, he said, it's permissible, it's permitted to fight the Khawarij if they attack the Muslims when it comes to their wealth, themselves, or their families. And this is because the Prophet ﷺ ordered that they be fought. Who recalls the hadith, or the meaning of the hadith? The Shaykh, he just said, the Prophet ﷺ ordered that they be fought, that the Khawarij be fought. Okay, so the brothers mentioned another word in the hadith. Fighting them is like fighting or killing Aad or Tham. Is it Aad or Tham? لا في قتالهم بالذات. إن النص فإن في قتلهم أجرا لمن قتلهم. The Prophet ﷺ said, the one who kills them, there's a reward for the one who kills them. There's a reward for the one who kills them. So he said, because the Prophet ﷺ ordered that they be fought, وَلِأَنَّ عَلِيًّا رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ قَاتَلَهُمْ لَمَّا تَعَرَّضُوا لِعَبْدِ اللَّهِ ibn Khabbab ibn al-Arat رضي الله عنه وقتلوه. And this is also because Ali رضي الله عنه fought them. He fought the Khawarij. When they attacked, and this is a companion, Abdullah ibn Khabbab ibn al-Arat رضي الله عنه وقتلوه, and they killed him. وشقوا بطن وليدته وكانت حاملة. And they cut the womb of his daughter, the daughter of this companion, and she was pregnant. Right, this shows how barbaric they were, and how barbaric they even are in this day and time. They killed this companion, and they cut the womb of his daughter while she was pregnant. فعندئذ عزم أمير المؤمنين على قتالهم. So when that happened, Ali radiallahu anhu was determined to fight them. لِأَنَّهُمْ حَصَلَتْ مِنْهُمْ بَوَادِرٌ. And this is because they were transgressing and being oppressive. طيب. So the Shaykh, he already explained. If there are people who have the ideology of the Khawarij, they're not to be fought. They're not to be fought. As long as they themselves are not, revolting or taking up arms and they don't have, power or strength and what have you, right? For us here in America, another issue comes up. And that is, there are many Muslims, unfortunately, who have the ideology of the Khawarij. So for us, as Muslims, can we go to the authorities here, the non-Muslims, and inform them that so-and-so is Khariji, or we say Daesh, or whatever, the terms that they use today, al-Qaeda, al-Shabab, these different people are labeled as terrorist organizations. If a person has the ideology of the Khawarij, tamam and completely, can you go to the authorities and inform them that this person is Khariji? Can you do that?
Yes.
Who say yes? You say yes? Mutlaqan is just like that. In general, it's going to be a lot of Muslims in prison if that's the case. If you just leave it general like that, it's going to be a lot of Muslims in jail. It's detail. What's the detail? It's similar to what the Shaykh already mentioned. No, we're saying there's a person, of a person. He just came home, right? And unfortunately, he was indoctrinated with the ideology of Daesh, right? ISIS, whatever these groups are. He has the same aqidah and everything. Can you, as a Muslim, go to the authorities and tell them, so-and-so, I know him, and he identifies as ISIS, or he identifies as al-Qaeda, or al-Shabab, or Jabhatul Nusra, or whatever. Can you do that as a Muslim? Is that permissible? Huh? You have to advise. Nah. So, say if a person doesn't take the advice.
I think it's maybe yes, because the harm that's he gonna what happened to the Muslims, to the other Muslims, if he did what he got that craziness in his mind. He's gonna bring harm to the Muslims more than if you call the cops, and at least he's gonna get by himself in jail.
Okay, so it's detail.
Yeah,
it's detail, because some people, they're saying that this is aiding and assisting the kuffar against the Muslims. That's a nullifier of Islam, by the way, if you didn't know. It's mentioned as the 8th nullifier in Nawaqid al-Islam of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Right, for a Muslim to aid and assist the mushrikun, right, the polytheists, against the Muslims is disbelief. It's a nullifier of Islam. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. And whoever takes them as an ally from amongst you, then he is of them. The verse. The detail is similar to what the Shaykh said. So if you have a person who identifies as Daesh, for example, or a Shabab, and this person is very evident, is crystal clear that he has intentions on carrying out some type of terrorist plot, blowing something up, hurting innocent people, it's obligatory at that point for you as a Muslim to inform the authorities. It's obligatory. If you don't do it, then you're blameworthy. You're incurring sin now. Because you knew that this individual was about to do what he did. And just think about all the craziness that was going on in the last 10 years. We mentioned some things. A situation of a brother and a sister in Cali. They shot up a place. This is maybe like 10 years ago, 2016, something like that. And these situations happen. So if a person knows about it before it happens, you have to inform the authorities. Now if it's a situation where you know of somebody, miskin, right? He's ignorant, and he just, he's like a sympathizer. They're trying to establish the Sharia, and there's some good with him, and like that. That type of person, if you know he's just ignorant, and he's not going to do anything, you advise him. you advise him. But once you know that individual poses a threat to society, at that point, it doesn't matter. Even though he's a Muslim, you have to inform the authorities. نعم. قوله, the statement of the author عليه رحمة الله, وَلَيْسَ لَهُ إِذَا فَارَقُوهُمْ أَنْ يَطْلُبَهُمْ. And the Muslim ruler is not to go after them, meaning the Khawarij, if they leave them, if they leave the Muslims, the Jama'ah of the Muslimin. إِذَا كَفُّوا عَنِ الْقِتَالِ فَلَيْسَ لِوَلِيِ الْأَمْرِ أَنْ يَطْلُبَهُمْ وَيَغْزُوهُمْ. So if they cease and desist, right? They stop doing what they're doing in terms of their evil, the Muslim ruler, he shouldn't go after them. He shouldn't be searching for them or fighting them. ما دام أنه لم يحصل منهم اعتداء فهم ضلال بلا شك وتجب مناصحتهم لعلهم يرجعون. The Shaykh, he says, as long, this is the caveat, as long as they have not transgressed. As long as they have not transgressed the limits, right? He says they are astray, they are misguided, there's no doubt about that. But it's obligatory to advise them, so perhaps they will return to the truth. وَلَكِنْ لَا يُقَاتَلُونَ. However, they're not to be fought. قَوْلُهُ وَلَا يُجْهِزُ عَلَى جَرِيحِهِمْ. The statement of the author عليه رحمة الله, and they're injured. Those who are injured from amongst the Khawarij in battle, they're not to be killed. لأن الجريح إن كف شره. And this is because if a person is injured, at that point his evil, it stops. He can't do anything. قوله ولا يؤخذ فيئهم. And likewise, he said عليه رحمة الله, they're basically, their property, their wealth is not to be taken as spoils of war. يعني لا تغنم أموالهم لأنها أموال مسلمين. Their wealth is not to be taken as spoils of war because their wealth is the wealth of Muslims. قوله ولا يقتل أسيرهم. And his statement عليه رحمة الله, and he's not to kill their captives. لأنهم مسلمون. And this is because they're Muslims, right? Based upon what majority of the scholars say regarding the Khawarij, that they are Muslims. وقد حصل كف شرهم بأسرهم وبجرحهم. And the fact that they have been taken as captives and they have been injured, this is going to stop their evil. قوله ولا يتبع مدبرهم. And his statement عليه رحمة الله, and the Muslim leader, he's not to go after the one who flees or he leaves. إذا هزموا يتركهم ولي الأمر. So if they are defeated, that's the key word. If it's a situation where they're being fought and they have not been defeated, this is not the case. He said if they have been defeated, the Muslim leader, he leaves them. وَلَا يَلْحَقُهُمْ. He doesn't go after them. لِأَنَّهُمْ كَفُّوا شَرَّهُمْ. And this is because their evil has ceased. There's a well-known story, and al-Barbahārī alayhi rahmatullah, he mentions it in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. He said regarding Imran ibn Hittan. Imran ibn Hittan. He said, فَقَدْ تَزَوَّجَ عِمْرَانِ ibn Hittan إِمْرَأَةً جَمِيلَةً مِنَ الْخَوَارِجِ. Some of the brothers, they already know the story. He said, Imran ibn Hittan, he married a beautiful woman who was from amongst the Khawarij. He said, وَقَالَ أَنَّهُ سَيَرُدُّهَا لِأَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ. Right? He said, I'm going to bring her back to the Sunnah. I'm going to bring her back to Ahl Sunnah. And this is something that a lot of brothers do. Alright? There's a lot of brothers who do this, right? Brother is looking for a sister to marry. She might be Sufi, Tablighi, Kafirah, right? Straight up Kafirah. Person, what do they say in English? I'm going to tabligh the system. That's what they say. I'm going to tabligh the system. Alright? Listen to what al-Barbahārī alayhi rahmatullah, he said. He said he married this woman. She was beautiful. She was beautiful. She was from the Khawarij. He said, I'm going to bring her back to the Sunnah. فَصَارَ هُوَ مِنْ زُعَمَاءِ الْخَوَارِجِ. And then he became one of the heads of the Khawarij. He became one of the heads of the Khawarij. Right? after this, he said some well-known lines of poetry where he was praising Abdurrahman ibn Muljam. He's the one who killed Ali radiallahu anhu. So he went from an individual who was upon the Sunnah, married this beautiful woman, and she flipped him, right? She indoctrinated him and had him upon the same methodology as her. And this is important. This is important, right? We can get a benefit. Brothers, don't think just because you're the man that you're going to be more influential on your wife than she is over you. All right? There's a lot of cases. This is just a very well-known story. But it happens to other brothers. I know of a brother, I don't know to this day if he calls himself Salafi or ascribes to Salafiyya, but I knew him as the one who was Salafi. He married a sister. And she was like, the Maghrib Institute, for those who might not be aware, the Maghrib Institute, it used to be headed by Yasir Qadi, Hadahullah. May Allah guide us and him. So, this brother, he married the sister. She was like, I guess, used to go to their programs and their classes for the Maghrib Institute. This brother, wallahi, I found out a few years ago, he was working with Yasir Qadi and at his masjid in Texas. Right? Sometimes we think because we're the man, right, that we're going to have like this big influence over our wife or something like that. It doesn't always work like that. Perhaps the sister is going to have more leverage over you. You don't even realize it. And this is even more so the case. It's more dangerous, especially when you're marrying a non-Muslim woman. It's more so the case. And a lot of times I tell brothers this all the time. Because we've had so many brothers come to the masjid. It's a musibah, but it's a reality. Brothers are trying to get married. There's nothing wrong with that. But understand, when you're trying to marry a non-Muslim woman, there's more guidelines that you have to think about. There's more guidelines. Right? In general, it's the same concept in terms of the marriage itself, but her being a kafirah, if you were to marry her and you have children, what religion are you going to raise and cultivate that child upon? This woman, she's a devout Christian going to church every Sunday. When they, come of age, are you going to prevent your children from going to the church with her? Or are you going to be steadfast and hold your ground as a Muslim man and say, no, they can't go to the church? See, these are the type of issues. They're problematic issues that are going to come up by default. By default. All right? And then you have some brothers, they might not marry non-Muslim sisters, or non-Muslim women rather, but they marry women, sisters that are not really upon the Sunnah. This is very common. They marry sisters that they wear a little hijab, they might have some pants on, they wearing like loose clothes, but it's basically she just dressed regular, right? Not really. She's not wearing a shar'i jilbab, a jilbab that's shar'i, legislated. If a brother was to marry a sister like that, perhaps he might start off upon the Sunnah, and before you know it, because the wife is influencing him, she might lean towards that liberal ideology. The brother might start getting watered down. Have a full beard that goes to his chest. Beard just keeps getting shorter and shorter. Before you know it, 9 o'clock shadow. Used to wear his pants above his ankles. Now, his pants on the ground. This is funny, but it's reality. I've seen it. I've seen it happen too many times. So, as the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that the woman is married for 4 reasons, right? For her wealth, her beauty, her lineage, and her deen. فَاظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكِ. He said, take the one who has deen, may you prosper. It literally means, may your 2 hands be covered in dust, but the meaning is, may you prosper. So the deen is the most important aspect when it comes to marriage. And inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala will suffice with this. وَسُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ أَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ أَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ.